Entrepreneurs have a sickness, and pretty much all of us struggle with it, especially myself struggles with this. And the entrepreneurial sickness, also known as the entrepreneurial challenge, the entrepreneurial sickness, and the entrepreneurial ADD, is that when an entrepreneur finds something that works, they stop doing that thing and they move on to something else. And that's because entrepreneurs are great problem solvers. They're good at finding tough problems, coming up with a solution for them, and then they just get really excited and they move on to the next thing. But here's the thing, and I know that this is something that we probably all struggle with to a certain extent, but the idea here is that when we find something that works, we need to double down. It's not the time for us to move on and go try other things. It's not the time for us to say, I'm tired of doing X, Y, Z. The time is to double down, right? There's a time to smell the roses, and the time isn't now, right? And so I wanted to start by talking about that. The book that we're reading today is this book right here. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Now, yesterday we were reading the financial Dave Ramsey's book, Total Money Makeover, and talking about that. We've actually been talking about finance and money in the last several videos, and that is on purpose. It's by design. And the reason why is because one thing that we need to knock out and get done is our financial management and the systems that we have in place that allow us to manage how much we have coming in, how much we have going out, and how everything looks as far as our financial picture. I know that it sounds crazy, but this really is the most foundational starting point for reaching our goals. Because if we do not have this in place and we just start going, then we might end up increasing our income and then not having the income do anything for us, right? It'll come in and it'll come out and it'll go out. That's Parkinson's law. We talked about that yesterday as well too. Expenses rise to meet income. Basically, that means the more we spend or the more we earn, typically the more that we spend. And so we really want to get our systems in place and kind of put together a budget and just kind of have a really good lockdown on this whole thing so that we can move on to the next steps, which are advancement, which are growth. And just this is something that I think has held me back in my career and in my businesses that I've done. And I think that this is something that probably holds a lot of people back. And I really want to focus on this because if we can get this one thing done and out of the way, I believe that that's going to open up the doors for more things that are going to be coming for us soon. So if you're with me, let's get this thing done. Let's do it right. And let's get ourselves set up for success in the future. So one of the things before I talk a little bit about this book, which is a really interesting book, actually, I want to talk about making it manual. Okay, data versus insight. This is a quote that I got from Ryan Deiss recently. He was talking about how he puts together his financial systems for monitoring his multiple businesses that he has. And he talks about making it manual. And really what that means is that when you have your financial statements and you're doing a lot of your accounting stuff, obviously you're going to want to use like accounting software that helps automate some of the things. But making it manual intentionally helps us do two things. It helps us, or this is what it does. It helps us take the data and turn it into insight. You see, Ryan Deiss talks about what the problem is that when we have too many automations with our financial management, we don't really have to do anything. Our budget gets, our transactions get automatically categorized. They go into this thing, we set it up once, and then it's kind of done on autopilot. The problem with that is that we do have data and we have it in place, and yes, we can access that data. But the problem is that unless we access that data and really look it over, we never get to having insight. And so insight is really what we're after, because with insight, a full recollection of exactly what is happening inside of our business, this is what can make us dangerous. This is what can make us succeed, is when we don't just have data, we have insight. So I wanted to talk about that as well too. Now, let's hop into the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This is a book about money. Inside of the book, he talks about 6 lessons. I'm kind of going to go through some of my notes here. So first thing that I wanted to talk about is that I can see why this book has done really well and why it's sold a bunch of copies. I'm looking on the cover here to see, sometimes they say how many copies that they've sold. But I mean, this has been a book for 20 years. It says celebrating 20 years as the #1 personal finance book of all time. What the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and middle class do not. Really interesting. Anyways, it doesn't say how many copies it sold, but I can tell why this is sold a lot. And one of the reasons is because Robert Kiyosaki is a master storyteller, which is one of my little note cards that I have here. Okay. And so the greatest salespeople, right? If you need to sell yourself, if you need to sell your services, your products, whatever, a vision, anything, right? We're all in sales, even if we're not, even if that's not our job title, we're all in sales. The greatest salespeople are world-class storytellers. And so that's exactly what Robert Kiyosaki is. He opens up in there talking about his poor dad and his rich dad, which he kind of makes it sound like in the opening. And it turns out that this is not what it was actually about in the book. But it starts out where he's talking about his rich dad and his poor dad. It kind of makes it sound like, was his poor dad his biological father, and then his parents got a divorce, and then his rich dad was his stepfather? That's kind of what it sounds like, which is an engaging element when he's going through and kind of opening up the book itself. Turns out that that's not the case. His biological father was his poor dad, and his rich dad was his friend Mike's father, who they went to the same school. And Mike's father was a very successful business person, had lots of businesses, lots of employees, hundreds of employees. And so he kind of got the insight from his poor dad and also his new rich dad. And so there's kind of a couple of things that I actually wanted to talk about that. The difference between the poor dad and the rich dad. To me, this highlights the power of mentors, and it does in two ways. Number one, I think that you don't have to just learn from your family, right? You don't just have to learn from people that you are biologically born to. You can go out and obtain mentors from other people, which is a really powerful thing. And so, if you're born into a family, you have ideology on how the world works. Maybe some of it's right, maybe some of it's not right, but either way, you're able to go out into the world and obtain more knowledge and get more assistance from mentors, which is my next point. I have put such little emphasis on mentors, and I feel as if it's hurt me tremendously, because when you get a mentor is able to look at everything that's going on in your life, and ideally a mentor is somebody that has been to a place that you are trying to go to. And so if you have the right mentor in your life that is able to see, that's been to where you want to go, they're able to see where you are today, and they can help give you not the crazy path that they took to get to where they are, but the straight path, and how much time that cuts out of the equation. They'll tell you what types of books you need to be reading, what types of trainings you need to do, what things you need to invest in, who you need to hang out with, who you need to talk to more about things. And so it really, to me, highlights the powers of mentors. And this is something that I've struggled with. And it's something that I've gotten a lot better at, seeking mentors for certain things that I'm trying to accomplish. And I feel like I've wasted a lot of time by not just getting mentors into my life. Books are great. Training videos are great. YouTube is awesome, right? These are all things that everybody should be doing anyway. And it's something that I've been doing for 10 plus years. I've been obsessed with this stuff for a long time. But where I stopped, and I hope that you will do better than is I didn't go hard enough on getting mentors in my life that have been to the places that I want to go. I've had mentors where they had done some stuff, but I maybe didn't vet things enough, and I didn't take what they said seriously, and they weren't even the right mentor in the first place. And so if you have a place that you want to go and you know where it is, this is one of the reasons why the book Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I love that book because it's so foundational for figuring out what your why is, or something that I call your North Star. And if you know where you want to go and you have an idea, then obviously get every single book and training program that you can get on that topic, but go one step further and desperately seek out a mentor that has been to where you want to go. You may have to work for them for free, and you should do that, right? That's something you should do. You may have to pay them to give you some of their time. You should do that. That's something that I personally do. And so I'm just throwing this out there because, again, it's something that I've messed up, and hopefully you won't mess it up as bad as I have. Okay, let me go through and check out a few of these other notes that I have here. Another thing about mentors, you want somebody that will shoot you straight and not worry about hurting your feelings. And if you can have that, you have somebody that will be able to meet with you and get right to the point. They're going to tell you things that are going to hurt your feelings. It hurt my feelings when I first started getting some advice from mentors because, man, they value their time and they are straight to the point. They are straight to the point. Ain't got no time to sugarcoat it. And although it hurts in the beginning and it's uncomfortable, stick with it and listen to what they say. Make sure, my recommendation for myself is to take the time to evaluate and make sure that the mentor you're trying to obtain is one that is of value, one that is worth it, one that is shares a similar ideology to you. Now, this will be kind of talked about in another book, so I'm actually going to just glaze over that. But this book consists of six lessons that the rich dad taught him. So I'll kind of give you a spoiler alert. We're not going to talk about all of them today, but lesson number 1, the rich don't work for money. Lesson number 2, why teach financial literacy? Number 3, mind your own business. Number 4, the history of taxes and the power of corporations. That one was very interesting, actually. He talks about how taxes were originally created in order to tax the rich, which is really interesting because the rich had, most of the wealth. And so they put taxes in place in order to get some of that wealth in order to put in the infrastructure for the country to fund the military and all that kind of stuff. But over time, the rich was able to, because the rich are so smart, and they were able to use their brains and their resources in order to push the taxes off of them. And this happened over time, and he talks about it in the book. Push the taxes off of him and push them onto the middle class, right? And so, really interesting thing to learn about as far as that goes. The rich invent money. That's lesson number 5. And then number 6, work to learn, don't work for money. Okay. So those are the 6 lessons. If you want to know them in detail, got to get a copy of the book. And here's another thing, guys, we read a lot of books. Some of the authors I agree with a ton. Some of them I don't as much. It doesn't matter. Abraham Lincoln said that, there's something to be learned from everyone. Sometimes it's just not what to do, right? Or it's just what not to do. We can learn from everyone. You know what I mean? Even if you have different ideology of Robert Kiyosaki, there's some things that I don't agree with. I don't care. I pick up the book, read it. I can use my own self-discernment to figure out what he's talking about is right. If what he's talking about is right, what is right, what I agree with and what I don't agree with. And honestly, I can listen to what his points are on the other things with an open mind as well too, because, I think that that's a good thing for us to do. Charlie Munger says that you should not debate your cause until you can debate the other side's cause better than they can. So that just means that, we shouldn't be so quick to defend our stance until we know every nook and cranny of the opposing stance. That's what Charlie Munger, the famous billionaire now deceased, has said. Okay, so let me go through a couple of these notes here. Tuesdays are always pretty busy. Had some meetings and stuff today. So we're going to do it just a little bit more not so scripted. Okay. So one of the things that's interesting about Robert Kiyosaki is his definition of asset and liability. It's a little bit different from what the definitions are in the dictionary or what are generally accepted as accounting principles, basically. And that is that an asset is something that puts money in your pocket, and a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. So, for example, he doesn't believe that a single, like your house, he doesn't believe that that's an asset because it's something that takes money out of your pocket, because you're paying a mortgage or whatever. And that's his stance. That's what he believes. He believes that buying a house is not an asset. He thinks that assets are things that put money in your pocket. That's how he describes it, plain and simple. And a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. So if you have a car payment, a house, per his definition, those are things that he considers liabilities. So let's see here, earning more money does not necessarily solve problems. It might actually compound the problem. So another thing that we talked about yesterday actually, is Parkinson's law. And that is that expenses rise to meet income, aka the more money we earn, the more money we spend. And that is a major point in here. And it was actually taught by his rich dad, by Mike's dad. And he talked about how he had a bunch of employees, and the employees would complain that they weren't making as much money. And, so Robert kind of accused the rich dad and kind of said he was kind of cruel or whatever for not giving them more money when he had it. And he told Robert, he said, even if I give them more money, first of all, I don't need to give them more money. I pay them a fair wage. Second of all, even if I give them more money, it will not matter because of Parkinson's law. I give them more money, they will spend it. They will not invest it, and they will not, do something better. Now, obviously, that's not it's not so black and white, right? It's not, nobody ever, if they receive more money, you know what I mean, would spend it all. It's not, life's not that black and white. But what he is saying is that is a general truth that is not the answer. The answer is not to get a $1 per hour raise. That is not the goal. The goal is to acquire assets that make money. So you have he talks about having your job, like your profession, and your business are the things that are assets that you own that make you money. So you have your job, like for me, I'm a real estate agent. My job, my profession is selling real estate. My business, for example, is like buying rentals, right? Buying properties that produce a cash flow. That would be an example of this situation. Okay. Increasing and spending. Let me read one thing here from the book. Are you learning something today? I'm learning every day. And by the way, the reason why I make these videos is so that I can learn and remember this information, because here's what's going to happen is I am going to, when I get done with this video, I'm going to put this book on my bookshelf and I'm not going to look at it for a while. But there may come a time where I actually need another element from this book, and I will come back to it and look at it, possibly do a reread on this thing. Okay, let's see here. Left hemisphere moment. Okay, so they were ready to learn more. It's kind of a long little summary for this chapter. They made a great profit and business did well for 3 months until a fight in the library shut it down. They're talking about Robert and his friend Mike. They started up a little business in the library that had to do with comic books. There was a fight that broke out and they had to shut it down. But they learned the first lesson of making money work for them, even when they weren't physically present. They had Mike's sister or some friend or something monitor their little comic book stores. Basically, they were using these comics that were like trash or something like that a real comic book store gave. This is when they were kids, and they gave them the trash comics or whatever, and they kind of like rented them out in the library. They said, hey, here's for 2 hours, you can read as many comic books as you like for X dollars or X pennies or cents or whatever it was. And so they did that. They weren't even there. They had somebody's sister or friend monitor it, and they paid a portion of it and let her read the comics for free. So they did that even when they were not physically present. They were ready to learn more, and Mike's dad was ready to teach them. Left hemisphere moment. Despite having a high-paying job, people like Robert's poor dad struggled to make ends meet. Right hemisphere moment. Looking at the discarded comic books in a new, creative way led to a business opportunity. Subconscious moment. People let the emotions of fear and greed rule their lives. What was Robert saying? Now it's time to reflect. Ask yourself, what is Robert saying in this quote, and why does he say that? In this section, you do not need to agree or disagree with Robert. The goal is to understand what Robert is saying. Remember, this curriculum is designed, blah, 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 blah. Take the time to discuss each quote until you understand it. Okay, I'll read off a few more of these quotes from the book. Number 1, the poor and middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them, right? So when, in the book, he talks about how the poor and middle class are constantly trying to make money, while the wealthy are trying to obtain assets that make them money, right? Whether they are there or not. Life pushes us all around. Some people give up and others fight. A few learn the lesson and move on. They welcome life pushing them around, meaning that some people just accept life to be the way that it is. They never question anything. They just accept it, and they never push back or move on. Robert, in the book, pushed back and, put himself into some discomfort to, kind of create a situation between him and Mike's dad, who had hired him. And that actually engaged Mike's dad, the rich dad, to have a conversation and do some actual mentorship with Robert. Next quote, stop blaming me and thinking I'm the problem. If you think I'm the problem, then you have to change me. If you realize that you're the problem, then you can change yourself, learn something, and grow wiser. So that is a really, really important quote from the book, because it talks about taking full responsibility. And this is not something that just comes from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's also, if you have ever taken read any of Grant Cardone's books or gone through his sales training, he talks, his main shtick, and I don't know if this is technically his main thing, but from me going through his training program, the Cardone University, in my opinion, the number one thing I took away from his training program, always take full responsibility, because there's no other way. Even if you're in the wrong, still take full responsibility. Because if you don't take full responsibility, then there's nothing that can be done, right? You become a victim if you do not accept full responsibility. And so even in times where you might be questioning, it's not my fault. Okay, it might not be your fault for sure, but still take full responsibility. Take responsibility for something is kind of the idea here. And it's the same thing that the rich dad is telling us. Stop blaming me and thinking that I'm the problem. If you think I'm the problem, then you have to change me. Right? If you don't take full responsibility, then you're a victim. If you realize that you're the problem, then you can change yourself, learn something, and grow wiser. This is the next one. When it comes to money, most people want to play it safe and feel secure. So passion does not direct them. Fear does. Comfort creates problems. Fear compresses. What did he say? He didn't say it in this quote, but he talked about it in this section of the book. We'll just move on. Let me read it one more time. When it comes to money, most people want to play it safe and feel secure. So passion does not direct them. Fear does. Sorry, it's not going to come to me. So, but anyways, basically, when it comes to money, most people want to play it safe. That's why the 9-to-5 job is something that a lot of people take, and they never push back on life. And that is because they value that comfort over the risk and, the possibility of creating a life that they might want. And that doesn't mean you need to be an entrepreneur in order to do that. It doesn't even mean that you need to work or have a job in order to do that if you stay at home, for example, and that's what your calling is. But the main thing here is that most people accept the most minimal basic comfort and then they just call it good at that, and they never try to push beyond that. Jim Rohn has a book called The Power of Ambition, and we're going to talk about that in the next couple of days. He talks in that book about how human beings are literally the only life on Earth that will settle for less and not become their maximum potential. Take a tree, for example. What does a tree do? It plants its roots as deep as possible. It grows as tall as possible, as wide as possible, with as many branches and leaves as possible. That's what a tree does. But people, us, we accept the things that happen to us in life, and it stops us, it hurts us, and it stops us from moving forward. So Jim Rohn in that book is telling us that, hey, we got to push through that. Okay, good. There's a ton more of these, and that is just coming out of the first lesson, which is The Rich Don't Work for Money. The book is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, a good one to pick up for sure. Thanks for taking the time to watch this, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.